All right, Miss Monique. First off, thank you so much for being here, taking time out of your busy day. I know I was talking to Hank over at Publisher Rocket yesterday, and he was telling me you're kind of the person behind the madness of Atticus in terms of customer support and who people reach out to, and you're the one responding. So I know you're probably super busy. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here. I'm super excited to talk to you. Um, but just kind of to get into it, a little short intro. If you want to just give a really brief background on kind of who you are and what led you into, and I'm curious how you ended up with Dave over at Atticus. So I'd love to hear that story too. But that'll just give people kind of an idea of who you are, and then we'll dive into the interview.
Sure. Well, first, thank you so much for having me here. I'm very excited to be here. I love the topic of marketing and anything related to books. So, my background, as I'm sure a lot of people can relate to here, is I've always been an avid reader. And growing up, I was just kind of the mindset like, if I can be involved in books in any way, shape, or form, that's what I want to do. But that's like a really vague goal. And I didn't really know how to go into that. So I did go to university for English and I got an English degree, but then it's still at the end of that, you're like, well, now what? And I did end up getting hired as a sales and marketing manager for an environmental tech company, which had nothing to do with books. But they gave me the opportunity to really expand my personal education. So I did more self-directed learning from there, and I learned desktop publishing, which is the fancy terminology for print layout. So anything from magazines and brochures to books, which is where my interest lied. And then I went and did more, and I got into graphic design so that I could start designing book covers and be involved that way. And as soon as I had any of these skills, I started doing like a side hustle, and I would promote myself as a book formatter or a book cover designer. I have always written, and so I started ghostwriting as well, and I did copy editing, and just any way that I could involve myself with books, I was all about it. And I got into sales and marketing as my job. So I did a really deep dive on um, how to do that more online as well and promote anything online. But my interest was always like, well, how could people sell books? So then I started adding that to my experience as well. And I would help authors with their ad campaigns or anything like that. And this, I started doing all these side hustles like way back in 2006. So the market has changed dramatically since then. And I actually started with Publisher Rocket a few years ago now. I was one of their early adopters. As soon as Publisher Rocket launched, I bought into it. I love the excitement of the data and everything. And they sent out an email one day saying that they needed to hire people. And I applied and just really hit it off with the team. It was just a perfect fit. So when Atticus was launched, I moved over there as well. So now I actually work with both sides of those businesses. They are separate, but everybody knows Dave Chesson, so they're also related. And then now I am the customer success manager for Atticus and also the educational curator. So any of the tutorials and live demos, any presentations like this, it's me that does the talking. So I basically teach people how to use Atticus as efficiently as possible. And for anybody who doesn't yet know what Atticus is, it's a book formatting program so that you can format your books for yourself without the cost of hiring a professional book formatter. And for me, the biggest appeal to that is not just saving the money, but also saving the time. Because if you have worked with a professional book formatter before, it can take a lot of time to go back and forth and get the final copies in your hands. And I'm not the most patient person. So if I'm doing the work myself, then I feel like I'm involved. But if I've handed it off to somebody else and all I have to do then is wait, it'll drive me crazy. So that's a really big perk of Atticus, in my opinion.
Yeah, so not the biggest leap from kind of your background into the world you're in now, which is always really cool because when I talk to different people, and I talk to a wide range of people, and I'm sure you come across a wide range of people as well, is some backgrounds you're like, how in the world did you ever end up in publishing and the authoring world? And then some people you're like, oh, that makes so much sense. Of course, this is where you are, right? And then, of course, everybody knows Dave Chesson. If you don't know who Dave Chesson is, I don't know what to say because I mean everybody knows who the guy is. He's like one of the he's like one of the godfathers of self-publishing. I mean, he's just and I've also like early adopter of Publisher Rocket. I think it's one of the if you could whittle down a list of tools, and Atticus fits in this as well. If you could whittle it down a list to like just a handful of tools that every author, self-published author really needs, like Publisher Rocket's in the top, Atticus in the top, because you're thinking they don't only help you get your book, like let's say for Atticus, for example, because this is a marketing summit, but we were talking a little bit off air before we hit record is good luck marketing a book that's not as professional looking as possible, which comes book cover, editing, blurb, and of course formatting. Um, and I've experienced hiring outside help for formatters where it's kind of a nightmare. I am a super patient person, so a little different than you, but it got to the point where I was like, come on, at some point I need something back, right? Now, because Atticus came out, it's like it's so hard to explain how quickly once you learn it, how quickly you can get your book formatted looking the way you want it to look. It's professional, it matches the print size that you're going to be putting it out. I mean, and we're going to be doing a screen share here in a little bit. Of course you leading the dance because I wouldn't feel as comfortable leading the way. But it's just one of those kind of key elements that every self-published author should have, in my opinion. I'm unbiased. I'm not sponsored by Atticus. I don't work for them. So my opinion holds weight because there's nothing backing me. I just think it it brings so much to the table, not only saving money, which as we know, especially if we're talking marketing and self-published authors, it's you want to hold on to as much of that money as you can in terms of as you're getting your book put out because it can cost so much money. Um, so I think that's where Atticus comes into play, and it can just be such a huge lifesaver in terms of paying a nominal fee and what I consider a nominal fee for what you're getting in return. And then of course stuff like Publisher Rocket, which we have a separate webinar or talk on for this summit too. It's like even if those were the only two things you had, you're putting yourself kind of above the rest of the crowd in terms of where everybody else is. I mean, do you agree with something like that? And I know you might be a little biased because you work for them, but like it's true.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree with you more. And I agree. I am biased because I work for them, but I work for these companies because I believe in them so much and because they are like industry changing. And the things that are yet to come is just astonishing. And one of the really cool things with working for Dave is the teams that he builds are authors. So it's every program that he creates, Atticus included, is designed by an author for authors, and it's supported by authors. So everyone on our customer success team is also indie published authors. So we all get it. We've all been there and we've gone through this and we know what is needed. So there are alternatives out there for book formatting. In addition to just hiring it out, you could use something like InDesign or one of those programs, but the learning curve is enormous. That's what I started on way back in 2006. That's what I trained for. And it took me months to learn the bare minimum. And I, spent tons of money going to school for this program and paying for the program. And there's no support with that. It's not like you can write into somebody and say, hey, I don't get this, there's no support. You're on your own. And it's just a lot more than the average author needs as well. So you're learning so much more than you need to learn, whereas Atticus is so streamlined. It's exactly what an author needs, as simply as it can be done to get the best results. So you can format a book entirely. If you have it written, you could format it within 20 minutes to half an hour once you know kind of where things are. I kind of describe it as a multiple choice thing. And we will look at a few different things inside Atticus as we talked about later. But basically you're just clicking what options you want. But it goes beyond that as well, because one of the One of the continuing costs of publishing is making updates. So I'm sure you'll talk in this summit about all the different ways that you can market. And a lot of people will tend to think that that's outside the book. Like those are ads that you're doing, it's a website you're running, all of these things, it's outside the book. But you can do that inside the book as well. And when you have control over your formatting, you can update it whenever you want. You can add content, you can change content, you can do all of that whenever you want without having to pay somebody to do it and wait for them to do it. So there's just a lot of ways that you can use formatting inside your book to also help you market while you're saving those costs at the same time.
Okay, I think you just literally kind of pulled out a golden nugget there that people don't really understand. Like they might be thinking like, all right, this is a marketing summit. What does formatting have to do? But like, let's talk front and back matter. Like, if you're talking marketing, like one of the core elements that comes along with marketing when we're talking fiction authors, I mean, and nonfiction, but we're talking to fiction authors here is front and back matter. So, like, when we're talking formatting the inside of the book, if you don't mind kind of expanding on that a little bit, because I think you literally hit the nail on the head. And I think it's a point that maybe if you didn't bring up could have easily been missed. And I think this is really, really important to like drill in on. And then we can kind of go inside Atticus with you leading the way and showing us kind of like some real kind of live examples and tutorial, like kind of moving through it and stuff like that. But like in terms of like front and back matter, when we come to formatting, like why would that be so important to marketing if you're a fiction author?
Well, I know one of the things that is guaranteed to come up probably time and time again in almost every one of your interviews is going to be building a list. And that's really scary for a lot of fiction authors in particular, because fiction authors tend to be a little bit more introverted. They want to write their books, and then they interact with their characters. They don't necessarily want to put themselves out there um, and be salesy and promote themselves. And that's not what most authors are in this for. But it's such a crucial part of being an author. If you're wanting to make this your career, you have to treat it like a business. And part of that business is making sure that you're able to make the sales. And that helps when you have a list. So I'm sure people are going to be talking about lead magnets and cross promoting and doing things like these summits and book tours. But all of that is going to come back down to getting more people on your list, because that's who you're going to be able to sell your future books to. And I know we all, as much as we may logically understand that the industry is not really a write a book and it will sell kind of thing. Like we may all logically know that there's more to it than that, but every single one of us has the dream that we'll write a book and we'll become instantly famous and a million people are going to read it, but it's just not the reality. So it could happen. And I sincerely wish it happens to everyone watching this, but it's not generally the reality. So if you can get people following you and wanting to read more from you, and if you can give them more ways to connect with you and want to read what you have coming next, because if you write one fiction book, you're going to need to write more in order to really build this as a career. So all of these things you can put inside your book as well. So while you may be doing ads to drive traffic to your email list and such, you can also do that from inside your book. So you can have links to your lead magnets. You can send people audiobook samples, or you can do cross promotions within your book. You can have all these different things that you're doing outside of the book. You can also promote it inside the book as well.
Yeah, which is a really crucial, I think, element. It's like it's a simple kind of thought, but I'm hoping most people don't miss it because it really is important. And funny enough, you probably don't know this because we just kind of came to know each other, is building a list and email marketing is actually what I do for people. So like you say that, I like my ears perk up. I'm like, yes, you're preach it, sister. Like that is it. Because if you want to have, and this is how I think, and are you a fiction author as well?
Yeah.
Okay, so like you tell me if this is how you think too. I think more long term in terms of success in my authoring career. Like, yes, you want to hit those short term wins and milestones and stuff like that and goals, whatever it is. And it's subjective to the author. Like everybody's goal is going to be different. Like my goal is not maybe not the same as yours, and vice versa and stuff like that. But like when I'm thinking, if in an ideal world my main income came from authoring, I'm thinking longer term. I'm thinking 3, 5, 10 years down the road. I'm not saying it might take that long, and it might. Like it's fine. Like it might take that long, but like I'm thinking, what processes and systems and things can I do right now that if I do it right, set it up correctly, like front matter and back matter in all the books you write, especially in fiction, because series are you nailed this point. Writing in a series is really crucial if we're talking making as the most money you can in terms of like read through and stuff like that. Because it's just logistically speaking, it's harder to take somebody from a standalone to another standalone unless you're already established, right? So having a series is really important. But like, let's say Monique with 10 books and nobody on their list, and Monique with 10 books and 5,000 people on her list, or even 1,000 people on her list. Like this Monique is already set up to be more successful, not just now, but long term than the person who has no audience, has no list, maybe relying too much on social media or the fingers crossed, throwing up a prayer approach. Like I've done that before. Like it's not no shame in it. I think it is a typical kind of normal thought people have. Um, but like you mentioned, like I would love if everybody watching this or even one person is that unicorn or that person that catches lightning in the bottle, right? But realistically, it's probably not going to happen. Um, so having front and back matter nailed where people can go grab a reader magnet or some kind of incentive to get on your list. So because it's low hanging fruit, like there are other methods like you mentioned, and I've talked about this with other people in different interviews, and I'll talk about it in like my own interview, is like there are methods and systems and different sites you can use specifically for growing your list, but why not grab the low hanging fruit? If 100 people are going to grab your book, why not give those 100 people just the opportunity to come onto your list, right? Um, but then on top of that, let's say you already have more than one book out. Should you also be having it, whether it's front or back? And I'm curious what you think here, being in the Atticus world behind the scenes, is where should you place like the ability for people to go grab the next book? Should there be like a few chapters at the end of book one that lead into book two? Should it just be a link to book two and so on? Like how would that best work in your kind of in your opinion and experience?
Well, that's such a great question. And there's so many ways that you can do it. And when you are using a program like Atticus, where you're doing it for yourself, you can you can do it in a multitude of different ways. And this might be actually a really great time for me to jump into the program because I have some samples that you guys can see. So I'm going to share my screen with you here. Um, make sure I have the correct page open.
Yeah, because I think giving people kind of what we're talking about, we talked about this before you hit record, was talking about it and then showing them why we're talking about it is really going to kind of help connect the dots and the pieces together. So yeah, I think this is perfect.
Yeah. So while we're going, people will be able to see a little bit inside Atticus as well and kind of get an idea for what the program's like. But there are so many different ways that you can use, even within a single book, to get people on your list in a variety of ways and make it so that if they're all individual and they're all a little bit different, it doesn't feel too forward. It doesn't feel pushy. It doesn't feel icky. It doesn't oversell your list or your readers in any way. But I mean, the outside stuff is really important as well. So if you're, for example, selling on Amazon, getting those keywords and categories right is one of the best things that you can do to make sure your book gets found. And anybody who sees your book on Amazon, the more it sells, the more Amazon's going to push it to a wider audience. But these are people who maybe don't know you yet. So if you can take them from a sale that Amazon gave you and then put them on your list, you're taking that kind of brand new, fresh audience, and you're warming them up to you. So within your book, you can do this in a variety of ways. So we talked about lead magnets. So you can create a call to action, and you can see the formatting as well as how it comes out. So if this was an ebook version, if you don't have anything else to send them to, say you're a first-time author, you're starting out from scratch and all you have is the traffic from Amazon and you're trying to build that list right from the very beginning. You can do something like just use Canva to create some bookmarks so that they can print it off, printable bookmarks, and you can use that as a lead magnet inside your book. So just a really easy graphic, and then you give them a link to your list and get them set up. And you can be creative with this. You can do printables, you can do fan art, anything you want to do that is somehow related to your book would be great. And a way to get people from inside your book and onto your website. And when you have something like this in Atticus, for the EPUB version, you can actually link the image. So when you show it in the book, they can tap it and go directly to the link that you've set this up for. Or you could create like a pretty link or a shortened URL for the print version of your book, so it's easy for them to reference and pop it into their browser themselves. But that's a great way for somebody who's just starting out to get people on their list with very, very low effort, but it's still value to your readers. And you can have a call to action in the beginning of the book and in the end of the book, and you can do different ones as well. And when you're doing your own formatting, you don't have to worry about trying to explain how to do this to the formatter or where it needs to go or where it should link to, because that can be frustrating to say the least, especially if you're going to have more than one thing in your book that's not just, say, text like a fiction novel. You can also do things, again, if you're just starting out, you could promote yourself with live readings. So if you are maybe writing your next book, you can go live once a month and interact with people. You can do this on YouTube. You can have a podcast, whatever you feel comfortable with, you could do that. You could even do it on Facebook in a group. And if you promote it in your book, I mean, that looks pretty cool. It's unusual. It's not something that every reader is used to seeing. It's certainly not something that's common in, say, traditionally published books. So it sets you apart from everyone else. And as we're all probably readers here, how exciting would that to be able to say once a month you get to hang out with this author who has now become your favorite because you feel connected to them a little bit. So those are just some ideas of ways that you could convert a reader into your list. And we're all fiction authors here, so creativity is not a problem. You just have to start thinking about different things that you could offer. But more directly to your question, the kind of also buy. So if you do have a list of other books, so say you've got 3 more books, it's very common to have an also buy at the end of your book. Some people do put it in the front. It's really personal opinion. I don't think there is a right or a wrong answer to that. Personally, I like to see it at the end because once I'm through a book as a reader, I want to know what to read next. I don't really want to think about that before I've even started reading. So that's my personal preference, but everybody is different. So really, it's your option. When you're using a program like Atticus, this is one of the very coolest features of Atticus, is you can create master pages. So if you already have a collection of books and you've got multiple books here and say you've got them all in Atticus and now you're writing another book and you want to link it here, if you create this also by page as a master page, you can update it once in the book you're working on, and then there's a link up at the top that says click to apply changes to all other books using this master page. So anything else in your library or on Atticus, clicking that one link will update this page, throw all the other books, and then you can just re-export copies, re-upload them. One of the biggest reasons people don't update their also by pages is because traditionally it's been a bit of a pain in the butt. it's a lot of work if you have to go through and manually make changes to every single one of your books if you have a long list of books. Atticus takes care of that for you to make it easier, saves you time, and just make sure that you do it, because anything that can cut back on work makes it easier for you to actually go out and make that change. That could be so valuable, because this also by page is really one of the most important pages in a book, because it helps with read through, and keeping your audience with you and getting them onto that next book. But there's other ways that you can do this as well. So you might have the next book coming soon. At the end of your book, you could do a sneak peek, and you can include both of these pages. And it's just different ways of talking to your reader, depending on what maybe they will pay attention to and what hits them right. So you could have a page like this where it's a sneak peek. So the also buy page sends them to a book where they can buy it on Amazon or Barnes Noble or wherever you have your books. This sneak peek, you can again send them to your list. So if you have the next book coming, you could say, well, get the first 3 chapters free, join here. You could even pre-launch your book and say, sign up here to join the mailing list so that you are getting updates when it launches, or pre-sale or anything like this. You can have this in there in addition to the also buy page. And because it's different, because you've given it a different look and you've approached the situation different, it doesn't feel overwhelming to your reader. It feels exciting because there's something new that they can look forward to. And if you, again, need to update this in the future, say this book is already out, you could change it to a new one, or really anything that you want. And you can do all these changes for yourself when you're formatting your own book. So some ways that you could keep that readership going. Does that all make sense? Was that easy to follow?
Yeah, it was. And funny enough, as an Atticus user, I didn't know the master page thing. I don't know if that's me overlooking it, or I would go like, do the first book. All right, now go update the second book and then go into the third. Like, I didn't know there was a button. And I don't know if that's like a new update, or if I probably in true Philip fashion, I just overlooked it and wasn't paying attention like I should have. But that alone, because if you compare that, like, let's compare the difference between if you were to use Atticus for formatting your own books and you were to use an outside source. Okay. Now, I'm not saying this isn't like an interview to say never hire outside help. Like, if you don't want to use Atticus, there's there are places where you can go where they'll do a good job. But one of the big caveats for me is anytime I want to change my book's formatting, or if I need to update something, rather than because I hired somebody to do it and I don't know how to update anything, like, you either have to, I don't know, pay somebody to update it, or go to them and they'll charge you an extra fee to update it. Or once you're inside Atticus and you're used to it, it takes you literally minutes. I mean, to go in and make these very important, these are small changes, but they are very important. They hold a lot of weight when you're making these changes, when you're updating your also buy, if you're changing your reader magnet, or if you're changing however you're getting somebody onto your list. Because I loved, if you want to pull that image up again of either the live or the bookmarks, like, if you're a brand new author, because I think this is so perfect for people who are watching or listening and they're like, I don't have a book yet, so I definitely don't have something I can give away to get people on my list. You can get creative. Like, and for somebody who coaches people and manages lists for people to help them build, like, things like this would be actually really cool. And self-admittedly, I've never thought about something like this. It's not only unique, but when somebody sees this, it's not going to be like the same old click this link to go get like, it's like, this stands out, right? And it's really cool. And it might be, and maybe it works better in different genres than others. But like, for this, the little doggies that match the book that they're reading, like, people would eat this stuff up. It's cute. Like, it's cool. And then they get like tangible stuff. Like, it's really, really neat. And that would keep you from having, I'm trying to think how to say this without being like mean, but I don't know another word. Without having the excuse or the crutch to not get started, because You I talk to people all the time, and it's okay, but, like, I talk to people all the time, they're like, "I'm just getting started. I don't have something to give away, so I can't start my list yet." Well, Monique just myth busted that because she just showed you how you can get, and these aren't the only 2 examples, these are just 2 examples of things you can do that will hopefully not only drive engagement and interest to your list, but it's unique and you don't have to spend the time writing something separate, getting it edited, getting a cover done for it and stuff like that. Like, you can do that later if you want to, or if this is working, do it. And something cool about having something like Atticus, you can test this. Then if you have something extra that you can use later for like a piece of writing, put that in and see if you see any kind of difference. And then you'll know after a while testing the 2 which one converts better, and then you just go with that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, with something like this, you can test more than one in your book as well. As long as it's different and relevant, um, think about what would excite you as a reader. And I mean, there's an unlimited number of things, and you can play to your strengths. If you're a writer who's also an artist, you can create pictures that they can download of your characters, or you can have some sort of quiz on your website or a community page on your website where they can suggest what actor should play this character if we were to send this to a TV network. Anything that engages them. It doesn't have to be something that you spend a lot of time doing. You just have to make your reader feel special and excited. And you can include those throughout the book. And one other kind of really cool thing is if you're just getting started, like you said, and you don't have any of these, you can cross promote in your book as well. So in addition to an also buy page, you could do something like, you may also enjoy this book. And there are a lot of author communities who will mail to each other's lists. But taking that one step further, if you only have one book and you have maybe a critique circle or other authors that you're combining efforts with, you can share their books in yours, and with the agreement that there's then sharing your book cover in their book. And that's, again, it's relying on, say, the marketing from Amazon to get those initial books picked up, but it's still using the inside of your book to market and cross promote with your peers and different ways. And if you do have another book that isn't at all related, so if it's not part of a series, but maybe a totally different standalone book, you can promote that in here as well and include the cover. Show them what they're getting. You can do a write-up, even if it's not a follow-up of the book, you can do that as well. And there's just really an unlimited number of things that you could do that will just give your reader more to be invested in, because if you give them something else to do next, they're going to keep coming back to you for more. And hopefully everybody who is here is also a reader, because that's one of the most important things I think about being, especially a fiction author, is that you are an avid reader yourself. So think about what you would like from your favorite authors and give that to your community.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, I think you're right. Most, I won't say everybody, but especially people I talk to and come across is like most authors, if they're writing fiction, and let's say in this specific genre, it's typically because that's the genre they also enjoy reading. So they might be their ideal readers. So it's like you said, ask yourself, what would be appealing to you? What would intrigue you to take the next action? And I think
Mhm.
another important point is, and this might just be like marketing, across the board in any industry, but like, don't just expect people to take action or take the next step that you want them to take without any incentive, because humans are humans, and kind of innately we're lazy most of the time, and we kind of have to be nudged to take the next step towards something, right? So and I've made this is, it's a mistake that I made early on, or something I overlooked was, it's kind of like, don't just expect people are going to read your book. Like, you have to put effort into it. Now, don't just expect because somebody likes your book they're going to go get on your list. Like, there needs to be something that incentivizes them to take the next step, or they're most likely not gonna do it, right? It's like if you sent an email, for example, like if I'm working with a client or if I'm sending out my own email and I sent the email out, like whatever the content of the email is, that doesn't matter. And then I always like to have some kind of simple CTA, so like a call to action, which is what we're talking about here, just something, some action to take, right? If you asked a specific question versus tell me what you thought or give me your thoughts on this, like the engagement you're going to get on the more detailed specific question or call to action is so drastically different than the one of just like this broad casting a net out into the water, without any kind of strategy behind it. So there has to be some kind of strategic thinking behind what you're doing here. But like you said before, you can test out, you can test multiple. Um, this is a question for you, since we're looking at Atticus. Like, when could you test, like, and maybe this is a bad idea, this kind of just came to me, like, could you test if you had two ideas? Let's say you're a brand new author, okay, and you don't have an extra piece of writing to give away, and you wanted to test two different ideas to get people on your list. Could you just have those as back-to-back pages, or should they be like test it this way and then after a while see how it works and then put the next one up?
Yeah, you can actually absolutely have them as back-to-back pages. But again, I'm going to come back to that rule of think about your reader. So if it has value to them and if it's logically placed in a certain position, then you can do that. If you have, I don't see this as much in the fiction industry, but it's one of the reasons why a lot of fiction authors are a little bit nervous. So if you look at nonfiction books, they'll have sales pitches throughout their books, and some authors do it really well, and others do it really terribly. So I've had some books where I end up buying like 3 different things from one book because when I get to that point where they're showing me something, I need to have it right now. And then I've had other books where I can't even get through the book because they have the exact same pitch after every single chapter, and it just drives me bonkers, and I cannot handle that. And then I've read other books where I get to the end and I'm like, well, how do I have more? What do I do now? And there's nothing there. So you have to find that balance for yourself. And it is a bit trickier to get started with that way of thinking when you're a fiction author, because it doesn't come as naturally to fiction authors as to people who are, say, in business and trying to promote themselves using a book, and they're kind of in that mindset. But if you, again, think about your reader and think about things that make sense after that point in the book. So if they're just getting started into your book, maybe you can have a downloadable world map that they can use as they're going through your content, if that's the type of book you're writing. Or you could even say in the middle of your book, if you've got this character who you want to do a really big, background dump, but you cannot do that because that's like breaking a cardinal rule. You could have a little link to say, hey, check out this character's diary, and then have a separate little downloadable that they can go and get that backstory if they choose to. And it doesn't necessarily take them out of the story, but it gives them something that they could get extra from. And you could do that even mid-story. And then at the end, you're going to want to focus more on, again, like, now what more can I have? So if you're just thinking logically about where the reader is at the different points in the book, you can give them material and resources that make sense at that point. But again, kind of going back to, again, this is personal, and a lot of people do have the also buy at the beginning of the book. And that makes sense if, say, you're publishing the 5th book in a series and you're worried that somebody is going to pick up this 5th book and not know that there are 4 books before that. Then absolutely, it's a great idea to have that at the beginning of your book, to give people the opportunity to then backtrack and go get your first 4 books. But if this is your very first book, it makes more sense to have it at the end, because that's when people need to know what to do next. So you can put multiples as long as it makes sense for the position that it's in.
Yeah, I think that's the important point. It has to make don't just because you read the book and it was like, oh, that worked, that doesn't mean it's going to work for your book and your whatever your genre, your style is. Like you nailed it. It has to work. You can't force I mean, you can't force a square peg into a circle shape. Like you have to make sure the pieces fit correctly. Because kind of the way I look at it, if I'm talking about if I want to get somebody from book 1 to say book 10, I want the journey and the customer experience or the reader experience in this example like as smooth and frictionless as possible. Like I don't want anything tripping them up, catching them, pulling their attention away, making them think like, "Oh my gosh, why is this right here?" Or like, "Why in the world would they add this at the beginning or at the end? Like this doesn't make any." I want to keep going, and also like on the other end of that, don't write an awesome book. You have more books and you don't give them the ability to go move on because then they're going to be like, where do I get the next thing? Like, don't stop them in their tracks if they're going to be like a super fan because those are the people. If you get enough of those people and you write enough books, sky's the limit. I mean, that's where you see people like James Patterson and Lee Childs, or if we're talking self-published, Mark Dawson. I mean, you get enough super fans and you write enough books, like pulling them through in the easiest possible way. I mean, you take all the friction out. I mean, it's just you're basically I'm of the mindset that success is never guaranteed. There are things you could do to make sure you fail, but there are also things you could do to make sure you guarantee success can be likely. That doesn't mean it's going to happen, but there are still pieces that you need to put in place to make sure that you have the highest likely chance of actually being successful. And a lot of this is exactly what that it falls into.
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely agree. Having giving yourself the best foot forward to succeed is really where it comes in. And Atticus was designed to just make that as easy as it can be for you, because like I said earlier, one of the biggest reasons people don't do things, and like you said, you were talking about it in regards to the readers. Readers won't just do something because it's there has to be a reason to do it. And with authors, it's kind of the flip of that is that they know they maybe should do something, but the work to get it done or the know how to do it is what stops them from doing it. And it could be the make or break. And with a program like Atticus, it's just designed to make it as easy as possible so that you don't skip these steps. And even something like another kind of cool feature of Atticus, I don't know if you know this, but generally for the EPUB version of a book, for example, when you download it from Amazon, it will open to the first chapter. So I'm streaming, so now my screen is stuck, but it will open to the very first chapter of the book. So it skips everything. There we go, in the front matter. So if you do have your call to action in the front matter, or you do have that map that you want your readers to have before they start reading, for example, it might skip it when they download it. With Atticus, you can actually choose your start page, which is quite neat as well. So if you come into here, you can pick your page. So you can set it to your call to action so that the moment they open your book, they're getting what you want them to see. So if you make that important enough and persuasive enough and exciting enough for your reader, that one page can do so much for you. So even if you choose only to do one thing, one call to action, one way to get them onto your list, you can set it in the front matter, have that be the page that everyone who's opening an EPUB version at the very least, that's what they see first. This is their first impression. And if you give them something to be really excited about, you're going to win them over before they even start reading. So that's quite a neat feature that is not something that even hiring out to a formatter, often you can get that. So
I did not know that, by the way. Shocker.
good.
If people have been following me long enough, this is of no surprise. I did not know you could do that. And I think that is really because even when you do look inside, like before you decide to buy a book, I'm pretty sure it jumps you straight to the first chapter or somewhere. It's not where you would want it to be if you wanted it to be somewhere specific. Like it jumps you to a section. And
Mhm.
I think in terms of formatting, like this is where it becomes so important because if somebody looks inside, and I've heard what's his name? Nick Stevenson talk about this before. It's like if the ability to make that first impression, like with your cover, let's say you're lucky enough to get them into the book page and then they hit look inside. If you screw that up, you just hard stopped them. So, like, if you don't have the things set up correctly, or in this case, which again, I didn't know this is so cool, they go to the right place. Like, if they were to buy and download your book, like these things need to be correct. They need to look like other books. Like, there should be no difference. They should not know if you are traditionally published or if you're self-published. And the self-publishing um quality over the years is getting better. So like where it was like you're traditionally published, like oh you've made it. You're self-published. Oh, okay. You just wanted to put a book up. You don't really. Nobody wanted you. Now it's like it's getting now a lot of times it's it should look the same. And also from what I see, I don't think readers really care. They're looking for good books. And then once they find an author and they latch onto an author, they just want more of the same. But things like this are so important that you have to get right at the start. Or if we're talking marketing efforts, you're going to kill your marketing efforts no matter how much ad spend you have, no matter how big your list is. Like if you don't have these other things in place, you can forget about the rest.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And one of the things that we often get on Atticus support is from authors who are so determined to have this one little feature looking exactly like they want it to. And while I completely understand how important that is, as an author, this is your baby, it's your book baby getting out into the world. But I think you're also right. I mean, they're buying your book to read the story. So you want it to look easy to read. That is the primary goal. And you can do all sorts of really exciting bells and whistles. Like you can have a 2-page spread of beautiful character images, and you can do that with Atticus. But you also just need to make sure that it is easy to read. So things like having the paragraphs nicely set out and consistency. So, for example, the themes with Atticus, once you have it set up for one book, all you have to do is click on that theme for any other books that you happen to write, and you'll get the same look and the consistent factor. A lot of people don't think about how important that is, but it keeps your readers feeling like they're immersed in that specific world. And if you're changing things up frequently, which happens if you are sometimes getting your books formatted, you don't always go back to the same person. Maybe they're not available anymore, or they just don't have time for you. So if you're sending out to different formatters, you're more likely to get a different look for each book. And Atticus just skips all of that. Not only does it make it a heck of a lot faster because it's one click and it's formatted, but it also gives you that consistency so that your readers know what to expect from your books and they feel comfortable, and it looks like they've been a part of that world for all your previous books. And that's not marketing specifically, but it is kind of reader retention. The value is still there.
Yeah, yeah, like you said before, I couldn't agree more because I think it needs to be streamlined, but like the things need to match. Like if you're thinking your formatting should match across the series, it's the same. Like you wouldn't want like I write fast paced like military thrillers. So like my covers are there's a lot of black and red, kind of a darker setting. Like I wouldn't have my first book look the way it does and then my next book look all bright and happy and there's flowers that people be like, what is happening? This makes no sense. I just read this book. This cannot be the next book in the series. So like if somebody was to format their book, say, using that purple flowery one, and then the next one, they use that ether or whatever that second one on the bottom is, where it looks more kind of like science fictiony with the stuff like that. Like you need to make sure that when they are reading through and stuff like that, it should just blend in and it should match whatever they've read so they know like, oh, that's Monique, that's Philip. Like there's no drastic difference here because if you get too far off the beat and listen, I am one to color outside the lines, like I am that person, but there are things that you need to kind of keep consistent and stay within the kind of the confines of what you're doing across the board for as many books as you're going to write. Because I think that'll just be more beneficial versus trying to get too crazy and creative and making things different all the time. I think it's really confusing for the reader and it could just be detrimental to you.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. It also just makes it a lot easier on yourself as well. Um, like I had mentioned, the Atticus is basically multiple choice. If you just edit one of these themes, basically you're just picking. You're picking what you want to be included and adjusting. And Atticus is designed so that it no matter what choices you make, it'll adhere to industry standards for a book. So this is just as much how a book should look as well as this. So if you want drop caps, that's your opinion in your preference, or if you don't, but no matter what you do, turning it on or off, it's going to be what readers expect because it's designed for a book. You can't really mess it up, is what I mean by that. And then once you have it set up once, you just rinse and repeat with the new content, and you can focus on your job, the writing of the book. So, the reason you got into this without the worries of everything else.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So like we've been going for a pretty good time here, so I don't want to wear people out. They've grown accustomed to my long-winded talks. But I understand not everybody wants to sit here and listen to me blabber on forever. So if I was to boil it down to the bare bones of, let's say I'm a brand new author, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to make it as simple as possible. Like, what key elements in terms of formatting your book is going to not only hit all the, like, check all the check boxes or the boxes, like, but also if I get to the point where I'm going to start marketing my book, like I know I actually have the right key elements in place without getting too complex with too many pages. Like we're talking bare bones foundation of a house.
Sure. Well, with Atticus, if you already have it written in, say, Word, you would just import your manuscript, so the book content into Atticus. It'll separate all the chapters here. You could, if you're just publishing an ebook, there's 17 preset themes. You could come and click on one, scroll through, decide you like it, export to EPUB, you're good to go. If you are doing a print book, you will at least have to choose your trim size. So you could go through all of the different menu options here for setting up the paragraphs and everything, or you could use the default. For the print book, you just want to make sure at least you choose the proper trim size. So with formatting, it is as easy as 1 to 2 clicks, and then anything you want to do above and beyond that is super simple, but you could do it in just 1 to 2 clicks. As far as what pages you really should include, clearly your content, your book's content. I really think the about author and also by page. If you don't have any other books yet, you don't really have an also by page, use your author page at the very least to help people connect with you. So really quickly, another thing that Atticus does is it allows you to just set up your social media profiles. This isn't going to get them onto your list, but it is going to get them into your world and help them stay connected with you. So at the very least, you're going to want to have some way that they can connect with you, even if you don't have any other books. If you do have other books, that also by page, in my opinion, is the most important page beyond your content. And then beyond that, Atticus does all of the like mandatory stuff. It creates title page for you. There are a variety of copyright templates that you can use, and you basically just plug in your year and name. It automatically does the table of contents, which is one of the most difficult things when it comes to formatting. So it takes care of that automatically for you. And you really don't have to do a whole lot. So Atticus, it does the formatting for you and you just have fun.
Which is what you want, right?
Yeah.
I like that and I know this because I use it, but like it gives you what you need, so you're not having to be like, oh, like what pages do I need? I'm guessing. Like legally, here's what you need in terms of like if you're going to publish, like your title page needs to be there, your copyright page needs to be there. I think the contents is really cool if it does it for you, so you're not having to like manually do it to make sure everything matches up and stuff like that. And then like if you don't have anything else, just make sure obviously the book's there. Of course, that's like a no-brainer, right? Don't publish something that's not there. Um, and then you can come back, like we've mentioned before, you can come back and update these things, add to it, change things around, take something away if you don't like it, put something in place that was something that was already there before to test different, methods and stuff like that. But I think kind of like the theme of you just using Atticus in general is it's the user interface is very friendly and easy to use in terms of getting started, but then the learning curve is not as large as using more complex softwares or going out and using like three different places to do one thing for your book. I think I like the idea of having the ability to do multiple things in one area. So it's like you only have to learn one platform or one piece of software, right? Because it's like us as authors, what we want to do more than anything is write books. So the more time it takes us to do the other things, the more annoying it gets, the more time consuming, less time we have to write, which is just going to take us longer to get more books out. Um, so things like that. So like having a piece of software like this, or just software, or just tools, or services, or strategies, or plans in general, like find what works for you, find the simplest thing that you can use and get used to, and then just take that with you along on your journey. And I promise it's going to be so much easier for you, not just getting started, but long term, which is how I think all authors should think.
Yeah, I absolutely couldn't agree more. And I know we're wrapping this up, but there was one more thing that I meant to mention when we were talking about unveils, and I completely forgot about it. But with Atticus, when you have those multiple books written in your program, another insanely powerful marketing tool is to create a box set of them and sell that in addition to the individual versions. They are extremely lucrative, and really, really easy to do. If you have your books in Atticus, there's a box set feature where you just click it, you choose the books you want to combine into the box set, and it does it for you. And then you can export it and you have a brand new product to put on Amazon or wherever you're selling, and it combines all of your or some of your books, however you want to do it. And that's really incredible way of also getting more of your books read with very little effort.
Yeah, because then you're thinking instead of somebody having to buy three books with three different actions, they're getting a bundle of books and one action. And yeah, I think that's awesome. I think the ability to be able to take what books you want to bundle up and not having to like then go in and create another page and then manually import each individual book to make the one manuscript and like all that stuff. Yeah, I think that is huge because once you have enough books in a series, or let's just say standalones, for example, like I have a client that I used to work with that wrote like 15 standalones. And first off, I'm thinking, what are you doing? You could have made these a series and it would have been awesome. But luckily they were all within the same genre, same themes, same type of characters and plots. So it's like if if these three or four books were like World War II setting, just make it like a World War II bundle. If these two were more British cozy mystery setting, like so if you don't have a series, which I always recommend if you're fiction, write in a series. And even nonfiction is becoming more popular, like a series of books where it takes you through whatever it is that you're teaching or trying to, sell or whatever it is. But like especially fiction, to get somebody hooked in on a character or a plot and pull them through as long as you can, and just basically squeezing that story and character out until the juice runs out. I think that is so beneficial, and then being able to make that a box set like that, I think is awesome.
Yes. And as a reader, I couldn't agree more as well. I'm obsessed with series. So if I can find a box set, I'm in.
That's right, because it's so easy, right? And then you're just like, if I like the first book, I'll just keep reading.
Yeah, exactly. No
Yeah.
waiting.
That's right. Yeah, if you could lower that, we live in a time, we're in 2023. We live in a time where attention spans are decreasing. People want things at an instant, at their fingertips, on the computer, with as little effort as possible. So you can adopt that methodology and thinking when you're an author. Think of how you are as a reader, because you've mentioned this a couple times. You've said like as a reader. So like if you're thinking as a reader, what do you like? What pulls you in? What gets you going? Like think that way. It's even better if you write in the same genre that you love to read, because then your perspective is even more kind of honed in and niched down. Um, then I think it kind of opens up the floodgates for things to happen, kind of now and down the road for sure. So yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, absolutely. I think authors of fiction have a one-up in that sense when it comes to marketing, because they generally are their own market. So you don't have to guess. You know exactly what you would want. So just do that for your reader.
Yeah, 100% nailed it. Okay, cool. I'll stop talking. I say this in every interview I do. I say that's my last question, and then people know I come up with another question. But I think that's it. I don't think I have anything else to ask. So do you have anything else to add? If there's anything that we didn't touch on, I think this was the one thing that that you wanted to mention that you did, and then, or if there's anything you wanted to reiterate on, and then we will let people know if they're really interested in this and using it for their, not just their writing and authoring, but I think it really plays a key pivotal, aspect of the marketing, because you have to get these things right. We'll let people know where to go get that. But is there anything you want to add before we do that?
I think that's good. I mean, there's so much more that Atticus can do, but if you decide to jump in, you can learn it when it makes sense to learn it. And there's tutorials, there's YouTube, there's our amazing customer success team. So um, that's that's pretty good for here, I think. Um, I've shared with you some links. I wanted to help out everybody watching this with the marketing side of things. I've created a collection of workbooks. You can actually see them here in my Atticus account here. And I've created them so that it gives you something to work with if you want to start expanding your lead magnet library. There's a bunch of workbooks that you can use to brainstorm your world building, your character development. If you want to plan out a series, there's also short story prompts. So we didn't talk about short stories, but if you want to get into an anthology with other authors, that's a great way to market you as an author as well. So all of these little, the ones with the puppy dogs, they're going to be just a free gift to you, and you can use those to brainstorm ideas and turn that into something that your customers might want to read as well from you, or to experience from you. And they'll be provided for you in docx format. You can use them like that, or you can upload them into Atticus and go from there if you have the program. So that's a free gift for you to help you with the kind of brainstorming process to get some lead magnets created.
Yeah, which is great. Now, I'm curious, is that with the purchase of Atticus?
That's just a free gift for
Oh,
everyone.
that's amazing.
Yes.
Okay, that's even better.
Yeah. If people do go ahead and they want to try out Atticus and buy into it, there is a bonus as well for anybody who purchases through your summit. They'll also get a self-publishing for indie authors course. So basically additional steps on what to do after your book is finished, after you've got the print ready files, how to get it onto KDP, Ingram Sparkle, those kind of things, some additional marketing and sales tips. And that will be a free bonus for anybody who does want to buy into Atticus.
Wow, you're just free of goodies today, aren't you? It must be Christmas. Christmas in October when this will be
There you
going.
go.
Yeah, so that's awesome. So for people who obviously want to go find this, and we'll have the links at the bottom, but it is just app.atticus.io. But the links will be at the bottom of this page. So you just literally click those, the freebie link, and then also if you decide to go purchase Atticus, and also get that free publishing course, which is really cool, actually, that you've got two different things, which is awesome. But here's the burning question. People watching this be like, okay, Atticus does all this. It must cost
Mm.
$1,000 or $497, or it's $97 a month. I know what it really costs in the secret, but what do people, if they want to take advantage of this awesome platform and stuff like that, what skin are they putting into the game to get it?
Okay, so if we think about it in terms of what the average cost of getting a book formatted would be, the minimum value of Atticus for just one single book is typically valued at about $500. But anybody who is in Dave's world at all knows that he over delivers. So you get unlimited books. You can use Atticus as much as you want to. There are no limitations on it whatsoever. You also are getting all future updates, and there's a lot of really, really cool stuff coming still. And it's not a subscription, it's a one-time cost. So you only pay for it once, and it's only $147. So a fraction of the cost of formatting a single book for most authors.
And we're talking unlimited books, all future updates, um, all these different things that you can do that we just scratch the surface of because we can't be on here for 5 hours. Right. So yeah, listen,
Exactly.
I am a purchaser and a user of Atticus. I think stuff like this and yeah, if you know Dave, you probably were like, oh, okay, it's gonna be cheap. Because I'll tell Dave this, he over delivers, the undercharges, but he knows the market and he wants to give the most value and help that he possibly can without breaking people's bank, which is just incredible. So literally anything that guy comes out with, I'm like jumping on board. So yeah, 147 lifetime access, all future updates. I think is incredible. And like I said, we'll have the freebie link at the bottom of this. I think this is awesome. It's not one freebie, it's a bunch of different things in here, which is incredible. And then the free course with the purchase of Atticus as well will be below the video too. I think that's it, Monique. That was awesome. I enjoyed the screen share. I think that helps put, like I mentioned before, it helps kind of connect the dots when we're talking about things. If they don't use Atticus, I know what Atticus, I use Atticus myself. There are even things you showed, and I said, like, I didn't know it did that. So I learned two things at least. So I think
Excellent.
that's incredible that we can kind of walk people through while also showing them a visual so they're not having to like try to remember what we were talking about. Then when they go in and look at it, like, oh, what did Monique say? Or like, what was her answer to Philip's question? Um, so yeah, I think this was extremely valuable. So I appreciate you taking the time to do this. This was awesome. I had fun. Like I said, I learned a couple of things, and hopefully, if you're watching or listening to this, however you're taking this in, or if you're one of the crazy people that read transcripts, hopefully you learned something from this, at least one thing. Like me, it was multiple. And yeah, thank you, Monique. This was great. It was awesome talking to you and kind of getting a deep dive into the potential of what Atticus can do for people. Not just for your authoring, but we connected the dots for why it's really important when we're talking marketing as well. So I think that was key.
Well, thank you so much. It's been wonderful chatting with you. I'm really excited for everyone who's going through this summit to get some really great ideas and get more books out there.
All right. Well, thank you guys for watching or listening, and we'll see you guys in the next one.